Hey, good morning. We discussed yesterday that if a person cleans the house extremely well, then that has an impact on how they have to do the bedikat chametz. According to Shlomo Zalman, if a person checks the house on the night of bedikat chametz to make sure that everything was clean, then he fulfills the obligation of bedikat chametz in that way. So you clean the house very, very well in advance, and you can go b'derech ha'avara according to some poskim, and that's sufficient. You check to make sure, was this drawer clean, was this room clean? Double check, make sure that everything was taken care of, and that fulfills the obligation. So how do we clean the house? What are we looking for? What room would have to be clean? First of all, a place where a person plans on continuing to eat the chametz after the bidikah. Especially this year, we have a whole Friday, and we have a whole Shabbat morning where we're going to continue to eat chametz. Do those places have to be checked? Do they have to be part of the bidikat chametz? And the answer is yes. According to the Civic Court's Halachot, Shmuel Kamenetsky brings down the explanation that when you check the room that it has chametz in it, you're just making sure that all the chametz is consolidated. But what about underneath the table? What about underneath the countertops? What about places where you're not expecting to find the chametz? So therefore, it's important to look for chametz even in a room where there's still going to be chametz being eaten until the Zman of Yisur. What about a room that is going to be sold to a non-Jew? You're sealing off this room, you're designating it for mechira, you're selling it to a non-Jew. Does that have to also be checked b'dikat chametz? So machloket the achronim. Some say that because of the fact that you still are in possession, you still own the room at the shat chiyuv b'dikat chametz, therefore you have to do the b'dikah. You're not selling it until tomorrow morning. The Rav doesn't do the mechira until the next day. Therefore, according to some achronim, Ashkenazim, Chatam Sofer, etc., if you are going to be selling the room, you still have to do b'dikat chametz, even though you're going to be selling it the next day. However, Chazon Ovadia brings down that the minhag is not that way. He says he's observed many tzaddikim who have tremendous yirat shamayim, and they were never particular to sell the room that was anyway going to be sold. And therefore, if a room is going to be sold to a non-Jew, it is not obligated to have the b'dikat chametz and the night of b'dikat chametz. What about chametz which you encounter which is very difficult to clean? Maran brings down in Siman Taf Mem Bet that there are certain pieces of chametz, you scrub them, you clean them, you can't remove them. Halacha in that case is if a person spritzes, you put on some cleaning agent on top of them, and it makes it nifsal, not ra'ui le'achlat kelev, before Pesach, and it's sufficient in that way. So we have some chametz which is stubborn, you can't get rid of it. Maran talks about a case of a bowl which is used to make bread, you can never get it fully clean. In that case, he advises mixing some dirt on top of it just to be posel that chametz, nifsal me'achlat kelev, and it's fine. So nowadays you take a cleaner, you take a cleaning agent, you put it on top of the chametz, and it's good enough in that way. Person who tries to clean out a van, or sometimes you have the dining room chairs, there's chametz in these little tiny places, you can't even get to it. What do you do in that case? Same halacha. In that case, if you cannot access it, pour on a little bit of a cleaning agent, a cleaning material, and that is also, it's posel the chametz me'achlat kelev, and that's good enough. Finally, what is the scale of chametz that a person is looking for altogether? Do we have to be concerned with crumbs? This is a very, very big discussion in the Rishonim and the Achronim. How big does the chametz that we're looking for have to be in the first place? There is a famous line from the Gemara that perurin, crumbs, are batli me'elayhu. Crumbs are insignificant. A person doesn't have any significance that it attaches to crumbs, and therefore perurin are batel. Even without your bitul, the crumbs are themselves like dust. And therefore a person doesn't have to clean for crumbs. The Rosh brings down Yisrael Kedoshim. Yisrael Kedoshim means that the Jewish people have a custom that we go beyond the minimum requirements. And therefore there is already a discussion about cleaning chametz, even if it is a small amount. The lenient opinion holds that if it is less than a kazait, then you don't have to be concerned about it. However, it's very hard to go by that. A lot of times the more realistic guideline is that any chametz which is large enough that a person would eat it, such as, for example, if it's a Cheerio, even though it's a small amount, less than a kazait, a Cheerio is large enough that a person would eat it. A pretzel, a person would eat. Therefore, anything which a person would eat, you should be careful to include that in your b'dikat chametz. A person is cleaning out a van a lot of times, there's little tiny crevices and cracks you can't really get to. It's little small pieces, they're pirurim. Again, just pour some cleaning agent on it, spritz it with something, that's good enough. Anything which is just crumbs, b'di'avad, certainly with the bitul, it's good enough. But the Chadchil, you should try to rid your house of any chametz which is visible to the eye. Rabbi Hanania ben Akashya Omer, Atzah HaKadosh Baruch Hu L'Zakot, Et Yisrael Lefikach Yibad Lahem Torah Mitzvot Shneimar, Adonai Hafetz Matziko Yidei Torah V'Yadir.